Tonight, growing fears of another outbreak. A pub in Sydney is ordered to shut after 2 patrons test positive for coronavirus. Good evening, I'm Jeremy Fernandez. This is ABC News. Victoria records 288 new infections, the biggest daily jump in Australia since the pandemic began. Cars as far as the eye can see as Queensland reopens its border with New South Wales. And off the bench and into the history books.
Koala looking for 5.
Yes,
He's got it!
there he is.
5 tries!
Welcome to the program. A pub in southwestern Sydney has been shut down and urgent contact tracing is underway. Authorities are trying to figure out if it's the source of 2 local coronavirus infections. 2 recently confirmed cases attended the Crossroads hotel at Casula last Friday night. A makeshift testing facility is now operating in the pub's car park.
There won't be any drinks poured here tonight. The Crossroads hotel in Casula shut down. The possible source of 2 coronavirus infections.
It appears to be a likely point of connection where the 2 people could have actually come into some contact, at least with the virus.
The 2 positive cases both visited the pub last Friday night. It's now been shut and its car park turned into a mobile testing site.
It's essential that anyone who was in that hotel at that time in the overlap, that we undertake testing, regardless of whether you've got symptoms or not.
Earlier this month, authorities feared an outbreak in the Balmain area after a Woolworths worker tested positive. It's been revealed that dozens of swabs taken from concerned locals have been lost.
They regret very much that those 77 have been misplaced in the rush to get so many tests done so quickly. But they're also asking for you to come back and get retested.
There's also a reminder for anyone who's been to Victoria recently to be on high alert for symptoms after a Melbourne man tested positive after travelling to Sydney. He left Victoria before the New South Wales border was closed. Along the Murray River today, the traffic allowed between the states moved smoothly.
I think people are just resigning themselves to either working from home or doing other things, having a day off.
With wet weather forecast and more people expected on the roads, police are warning drivers to expect delays over the weekend. Jonathan Hare, ABC News, Sydney.
And Jonathan Hare joins us now from outside the Crossroads Hotel. Jonathan, are people there already getting tested?
Yeah, that's right. News of this new possible hotspot only broke a few hours ago and already people are lining up in their cars around the block trying to get tested at the mobile testing facility behind me. Now, health workers are quickly moving through the line, but there are still delays, which is frustrating some people. It's open until 9 o'clock tonight, and then on Saturday and Sunday, it's open from 10 until 4 o'clock. Now, New South Wales Health is working with the hotel's owners to try and track down anyone who was at the hotel last Friday night to try and let them know what's happened. But they're importantly saying that anyone who was here and is experiencing any kind of symptoms, they should get tested and isolate immediately.
Jonathan Hare reporting. For the first time, 5 million Victorians in the state's lockdown zone are being told to wear face masks where physical distancing isn't possible. The new health advice coincides with Australia's biggest spike yet in coronavirus cases. Another 288 infections were recorded today. Millions of single-use and reusable masks will be distributed for those using public transport, taxis and shopping centres. Nevertheless, it's feared the case tally will climb even higher. Ben Knight begins our coverage.
There's no sugarcoating a rise like this.
Certainly 288 new cases today is a pretty ugly number.
There are now more than 1,100 active cases across Victoria and hotspots in Melbourne's northwest corridor, especially in the suburbs of Craigieburn, Roxburgh Park and Truganina, which are still showing high rates of community transmission.
Those suburbs, people really need to have an awareness that if they've got symptoms, this may well be coronavirus. You should not be seeing other people.
So I know and understand there'll be concern across the community to see that number. It was always going to get worse before it got better.
But the massive spike in daily cases has led to a significant change in health advice. After months of being told wearing masks wasn't necessary, Melburnians are now being advised they should wear them when outside and unable to maintain physical distance, such as on public transport or when shopping, but not in schools. And they should get used to the idea.
If you can wear a mask where you can't distance, that's exactly what we would like you to do.
2 million reusable masks are now being made for distribution in the community. The advice on wearing them won't be enforced, but police are ramping up their offensive against people who break the existing rules. Police have issued 60 infringements in the past 24 hours, including a couple from Docklands who tried to breach 2 roadblocks on their way to Phillip Island, and 16 people at a birthday party in Dandenong after a tip-off that a KFC had taken a big order in the early hours of morning.
That's $26,000 that birthday party's costing them. That's a heck of a birthday party to recall.
As for gatherings like this,
whale watching down Mornington Way, totally unacceptable, total breach of the distancing rules.
I'm free! For residents of the towers that have been locked down for almost a week, today was their first chance to venture outside.
I love those bird sounds. God, that's what I love about being outside.
Oh, just to get outside's a relief.
And with a wet weekend ahead, the Premier is urging Melburnians to stay indoors.
This is not a normal weekend. It really isn't. And I just appeal to everybody to play their part.
And to get used to it. Ben Knight, ABC News.
Meanwhile, the Sunshine State has thrown open its borders, ending a 15-week isolation from the rest of the country. And tens of thousands of visitors have streamed through police checkpoints, chasing the sun, reuniting with family, and for one special couple, meeting in person for the very first time.
The arrival of midday, the 10th of July, has been a long time coming.
We've been sitting on the other side for a fortnight.
We tried before, but weren't let through because our car screams holiday.
The advice from police: arrive early in the morning or late in the day, but don't forget your paperwork or your GPS.
We accidentally came across it.
Yeah. We got lost.
If we can just see some form of identification, their border declaration and some form of proof that they've been in New South Wales for more than 14 days, we'd be happy with that.
It wasn't picture perfect in the Sunshine State, but the welcome for the first flight about as warm as water cannon can get, and the feeling was mutual.
And how excited are you to be on the We're called the Shushies because we always get shushed.
Inside airport terminals across the state, there was the odd lapse of social distancing as people were brought together. Mothers and children, favourite cousins, or the kid who finally found Nemo. The tourism industry is really pulling out the stops in the hope this can revive a struggling sector.
And I'm not sure they know what's hit them with the party that's going on, and it feels like Christmas here today.
Inland, it was a grey invasion, a convoy of caravans, but no one was getting in before Adelaide's Craig Dixon, who'd lined up since 6 a.m. to see his girlfriend.
How long's it been since you've seen your girlfriend in Brisbane?
I haven't met her yet. We've met online.
More than 300,000 people have downloaded the border declaration form, pointing to a huge influx. But Victorians are out in the cold, unless it's essential travel. Queensland Police will be physically boarding all flights from Melbourne to process passengers. Anyone who doesn't meet the requirements will be escorted to buy a new ticket home, and if the flight doesn't leave immediately, they'll be put up in a hotel at their own expense until it leaves. Queenslanders who've been in Victoria will be put into hotel quarantine for 14 days, also at their own expense. It's a regime that'll be in place for the foreseeable future, but one most are taking in their stride. Matt Wordsworth, ABC News.
Australians trying to get home from overseas are about to find it much harder to make that journey. The last 3 operating international airports are halving the number of people they accept to just 600 a day between them. And if passengers do get a seat, they'll pay for their own fortnight in hotel quarantine as soon as they arrive. Here's National Affairs correspondent Greg Jennett.
For us, it feels like Mother India doesn't want us to go.
Her teaching visa runs out in a few days, but Deb Tellis from Newcastle's already feeling totally banged up in Bangalore.
It has been extremely stressful. the last 4 weeks trying to get out of the country.
Tickets out cost more than $2,000. Government evacuation flights, when they happen, are massively overbooked.
Just plead with the Australian government to help us get out of here.
She'll find no joy in Canberra.
We'll be in a restricted capacity for the foreseeable future.
Because Scott Morrison's agreed to requests from the states to throttle back further on flights for returning Australians. For the last month, an average 7,000 passengers arrived at the borders each week. Now the total will be capped at around 4,000 a week, shared unevenly by states with international airports, except Victoria, which is closed completely. States are bailing out of their exposure to the 2-week hotel quarantining regime, both on the numbers they're prepared to accommodate and the funding they provide. Every one of them will enforce a traveller pays rule.
Where possible, we'll seek to have some sort of national uniformity across those pricings.
There's no doubt hotel quarantining has helped protect the country from imported cases of coronavirus, but it's been anything but flawless, which is why National Cabinet's appointed retired senior bureaucrat Jane Holton to review the lot of it, from the training of staff to rules on testing and the care of young, sick and elderly passengers who've been subjected to it. Greg Jennett, ABC News, Canberra.
It hasn't been a great week for coronavirus in Australia, and it has some infectious diseases experts asking, is our strategy the right one? ABC analyst Casey Briggs looks at some of the latest evidence.
At the start of this pandemic, we didn't know which strategy would give us the best result. We still don't. Different countries approach the problem in different ways, and some that saw early success have taken a turn for the worse. And the global experience has shown how opening up the country again is akin to walking a precarious tightrope. We're now seeing the consequences in Melbourne of when you fall off.
The virus's natural inclination is to grow, and the virus is naturally a sociopath.
Sweden took a very different approach to much of the rest of the world, avoiding enforced lockdowns. For now at least, the country has one of the highest per capita death rates in the world.
The findings is the high death toll among the people in the long-term care facilities that we really wish we could have done something about.
These are Victoria's cases. They only started to surge back into the double digits less than a month ago, leading to the situation Melbourne is now in. Compare that with Israel, a country that had employed similar strategies to suppress the virus and now has a similar shaped curve. This week, the country closed a swathe of businesses indefinitely, but its leaders don't want to move to a complete lockdown while unemployment runs at 20%. Some experts think pursuing suppression is futile because it will likely lead to a cycle of lockdowns repeating.
When it takes off like it has in the public housing, in the hotspot areas, then you've got to reintroduce lockdown. It's more difficult emotionally to cope with, and it's very difficult economically.
New Zealand presents one alternative. It pursued a more aggressive strategy than Australia: eradicate the virus domestically and then keep the borders closed while returning to almost normal life.
Going hard and going early gave us the very best chance of stamping out the virus.
But will that work forever? And can our Kiwi neighbours be sure the virus is actually gone? We just don't know.
Casey Briggs there. An 8-year-old girl has died after a truck crashed into a rest stop on the Hume Highway in Sydney's southwest. Police believe the B-double was entering the rest stop at Menangle when it hit another truck and 3 parked cars. 4 adults were also injured in the crash. One woman is in a critical condition.
Words cannot describe how tragic this is, especially for the family who has lost a young child.
The 44-year-old male truck driver was not injured. He's been taken to hospital for mandatory testing. Major construction work on the Parramatta Light Rail is underway along the city's popular dining strip, Church Street. Business owners say the relentless noise, dust and fencing is driving customers away, and they now want compensation from the state government. Here's our local communities reporter, Lydia Feng.
When coronavirus restrictions were lifted last month, Hatali Patel enjoyed having customers back in her cafe. But a few days later, barricades and building works took over the street in front.
This time would be the busiest time for us usually, but right now, because they're making so much noise and drilling, there is no one here.
Construction of the light rail forces her to close the cafe early every day.
We're just sitting here, I feel so helpless and it's so stressful like that.
Anthony Leish's menswear store of 10 years is also suffering. With foot traffic all but gone, he says businesses must be compensated for the light rail disruption.
To the state government, please, we need some assistance financially, urgent, and we need it now. Otherwise our businesses will not survive.
A call for help Transport for New South Wales has ruled out.
We are doing everything we can to support businesses in this difficult time, but we are not providing any financial support.
There will be a grace period between November and February where construction on a section of Church Street will pause to help with summer trade. But many business owners say that'll be too late. They need compensation now or they'll be forced to shut up shop.
We absolutely will fight tooth and nail on behalf of the businesses and residents to make sure that they are still there when the construction finishes. Let's hope that this is not a repeat of George Street.
Construction on Church Street is set to continue for another year and a half. Lydia Feng, ABC News, Sydney.
The Liberal candidate for the federal seat of Eden-Monaro in the state's southeast has conceded defeat nearly a week after the tightly fought election. In a statement, Fiona Kotvoy says that with fewer than 2,000 votes left to count, the result is clear. The Liberal Party attracted a small two-party preferred swing, but it wasn't enough to dislodge Labor after the departure of the long-serving MP Mike Kelly. The incoming member, the former Bega Mayor Christy McBain, says Fiona Kotvoy has called her to congratulate her on the win.
A wonderful honour and privilege to be the first female to hold the seat of Eden-Monaro in its history. But for me, right now, it's about getting down to business.
Ms McBain is expected to deliver her maiden speech to Parliament in the first sitting week in August. A teacher has been charged with sexually assaulting a student in her car and on school grounds in Western Sydney. The 23-year-old was arrested at her home in Greenacre this morning. Detectives seized her mobile phone, computer and car. Police allege the 14-year-old boy was repeatedly assaulted by the woman over about a month.
Look, obviously this is a very difficult time for the boy and for his family. All I can say is that he's receiving fantastic support from both his family and from police.
The teacher has been charged with 10 offences. 5 Australian journalists face an uncertain future in Malaysia after documenting the struggles of migrant workers there. The team from Al Jazeera were questioned by police in Kuala Lumpur after politicians accused them of tarnishing Malaysia's image. Now they have been threatened with sedition charges. Here's Foreign Affairs reporter Stephen Jedgetts.
An uncertain wait in a cramped police station. Australian journalist Drew Ambrose and his team spent weeks documenting Malaysia's crackdown on migrant workers during the coronavirus pandemic.
When you look at these raids, you can't help but think, is this the practical reality of dealing with a pandemic? Or is it racism?
Their story revealed how illegal migrants were rounded up in detention centres despite the threat posed by the virus.
It's only when the trucks leave that you realise what's going on.
They are not murderer, they are not criminal, they are just undocumented.
It drew a furious response in Malaysia. The journalists were peppered with death threats online. Enraged politicians and officials called the documentary misleading.
I've got my ID.
Now the Attorney General is contemplating hitting them with sedition charges.
No camera. We will check with the AG first. The AG will decide whether there is any case, then if they need to be charged.
Catapulting the team of 6, 5 of whom are Australian, into their own headlines.
Several Al Jazeera staff have been questioned by police in Kuala Lumpur.
Australian officials are offering consular support while the international broadcaster is backing its staff. Charging journalists for doing their job is not the action of a democracy that values free speech. Al Jazeera said journalism is not a crime. If the journalists are charged, they could face the prospect of jail time. That would create many more international headlines and a diplomatic headache for the Morrison government. Australian officials will be working hard to resolve this quietly behind the scenes. Stephen Jedgetts, ABC News, Canberra.
Residents on the south coast are being warned of a higher risk of bushfires over the next 3 months. The south coast was one of the hardest hit regions during the summer's deadly bushfire season. The latest outlook from the Bushfire and Natural Hazards Research Centre warns of higher than normal fire potential in unburnt areas in the lead up to spring. Dry, long-term conditions there are being blamed. Nationally, the risk of fire over summer is still unclear. Forecasters are closely watching rainfall patterns and the potential for a La Niña weather pattern to bring wet conditions. A residential development southwest of Sydney is emerging as a battleground in the fight to save the state's threatened koala population. Concerns have been raised about whether the koala colony in the Macarthur region can survive at all if the bulldozers move in.
Wally's health is improving after being in Kate Bannister's care for the past 3 weeks.
It's got a really nice nature.
Kate and her family nursed the injured koala back to health at their property in Appin. She says rapid urban development of Sydney's outer fringes is pushing the species to the brink.
Last koala season, we probably had maybe 20 come into care. They'd been hit by a car, were loss of habitat so close to the main road.
The family is part of a group mounting a legal case against developer Lendlease over its nearby Fig Tree Hill development. Serious concerns have been raised about the safeguards in place to protect the region's koala colony.
We'll probably lose the whole colony if that happens. And we have got one of the only healthy chlamydia-free populations. If we lose it, they won't be able to breed, and that'd be dire.
The parcel of land slated for development in Gilead has been identified as a vital koala corridor.
The significance of this koala colony has just kept on increasing, especially after the bushfires. It went from being critical to New South Wales because it's the only one that's recovering and it's chlamydia-free.
A recent upper house inquiry recommended work stop at the development until the safety of the koalas in the region can be guaranteed. Lendlease says it's committed to following the inquiry's recommendations, but its chair says she's yet to see any evidence.
We've received no assurances about the Fig Tree Hill development since the release of the report. However, if it goes ahead according to what we heard during the inquiry, that's not good enough. It will have a significant impact on the koala population in this area.
An uncertain future for a species under threat. Timothy Fernandez, ABC News, Gilead.
To finance now, global share markets have tumbled as coronavirus fears intensify. The concerns also undermined commodity prices, which added to domestic market pressures. Here's Philip Lasker.
There's not much joy to take us into the weekend. Surging coronavirus cases across the US raised fears of another lockdown in several states. So most major markets weakened, even red-hot Shanghai. Not much heat here. Today's fall capping off a pretty poor week. Softer commodity prices hurt miners, particularly energy shares, and Sydney Airport is a victim of the intensifying restrictions. No one thinks Victoria's problems will derail the national recovery underway right now, at least not yet. Most analysts have downgraded their growth forecasts, but there are a lot of moving parts. How long will the lockdown last? Will other states suffer similar fates? Here's a clear and timely indication of what's happening in Victoria. The orange line shows dining and takeaway spending collapsed in Melbourne's 10 hotspot postcodes, much worse than the rest of Melbourne shown by the blue line. Commodity prices weakened. Gold has benefited due to concerns about global money printing and the spread of COVID. It's taking a bit of a breather as money flows back to the US dollar. That's partly why the Australian dollar is below 69.5 US cents again. It's also a reflection of concerns about coronavirus. Which reminds me of this other little problem. We've had a recession, yet there are far fewer insolvencies than average. It's because there's a moratorium on the insolvent trading laws, which ends in September. Once October rolls around, the orange line will be well above the blue line as a whole lot of zombie companies go to the wall. And that's finance.
In the NRL, the Sydney Roosters have bounced back from last week's narrow loss to the Storm, securing an emphatic victory over the North Queensland Cowboys. The Tricolours ran away with the match with 6 tries in the second half to win 42 points to 16. Winger Matt Ikevalu had a night to remember, becoming the first Rooster since 1955 to score 5 tries in one match.
It's always a blessing to even get a game with these boys, but yeah, it's unreal. It's still a little bit surreal to me to play with such a great team.
The Roosters are third on the ladder. Some of Australia's leading netballers are taking aim at the sports administrators because of a controversial change to the rules. Many are unhappy about the game's direction and want more of a say in its future. Patrick Galloway reports.
And flies that ball down the court to Bassett.
She doesn't go unnoticed on the court. Now Diamonds captain Caitlin Bassett is making her presence felt off it.
I think we've made ourselves pretty clear about how unhappy we are. I don't know about this one. Oh, my goodness!
Super Netball's decision to introduce a new 2-goal super shot weeks out from the season hasn't gone down well with players. For 5 minutes each quarter, goals will be worth double if shot from a set zone on the court. Many feel such a change shouldn't have been rushed through.
We've sat down as players recently and have come up with a manifesto about what it means to be a professional athlete, and I think that'll really be important to, what the game looks like for the next 50 or 100 years for us.
The lack of consultation was evident at one of Super Netball's most successful clubs of late, the Sunshine Coast Lightning.
I'll be very honest with you, complete shock. It came out of the blue.
Something as big as this, only 6 weeks out from the start, I think needed to be run by everyone.
Shooter Stephanie Wood is unsure how the Super Shot will change the game, although she does think it could create more dynamic players.
I do think that is a positive. Every time I coach younger girls, I tell them, you don't want to just shoot from underneath the hoop.
While most are unsure exactly what impact the Super Shot will have, it certainly has got people talking about netball. This past week, Netball Australia announced the State of the Game review, designed to get input from all of the game's participants, including the players.
Going forward, we've made it very clear we want to be a part of this decision-making process, and we want that collaborative team approach like we do here with our clubs.
The season starts next month. Patrick Galloway, ABC News.
Parts of Sydney woke to a foggy morning today. At more than 260 metres high, the new Crown Towers at Barangaroo peeked through the blanket. Construction workers high up on the building had a bird's eye view of the fog covering the city. It lingered well into the morning because of high cloud and the cooler temperatures. Let's take a look at the weather now. It's been an overcast day and showers are starting to build up. Sydney's temperature reached 17 degrees in the city today. Overnight lows ranging between 5 in Camden and 10 in the CBD. The cloud cover again kept temperatures a little higher than average. There were a few isolated showers in the upper west and scattered falls in the northeastern quarter of the state, with 10 to 30 millimetres around Dubbo and Gilgandra. A trough running through Queensland and New South Wales has produced warm northerly winds, meaning daytime temperatures have generally been above average. It's been a dry day in the capital cities, though we are seeing some storm activity developing in far western New South Wales and Queensland. That's the result of a trough of low pressure that's about to be given a boost by a cold front that's already causing showers in Adelaide. By late tomorrow, those showers will start becoming more widespread in New South Wales, Victoria and Tasmania before contracting to the east coast and moving offshore. The showers will reach from Adelaide to Melbourne and Canberra tomorrow. It'll be partly cloudy in Brisbane and Darwin, sunny in Perth. Back home, it'll be partly cloudy in northeastern New South Wales tomorrow. Expect some patchy morning fog and showers in the Hunter, possibly extending to the northern rivers. There may also be a few storms. On the water, winds will be generally northwesterly and light to moderate. In the southeast, it'll be partly cloudy with a medium chance of showers building up towards Sunday. Daytime temperatures in the low to high teens. Winds locally will remain light, seas to around 1 metre on a southerly swell. The inland showers will contract to the western slopes and southern inland during the day. There may be snow showers above 15 to 1600 metres. In Sydney, winds will be northwesterly at 10 to 15 knots with seas to about 1 metre. Another partly cloudy morning tomorrow with a medium chance of some very light showers, giving way to a mostly sunny Saturday afternoon. Down to 11 tomorrow, then a relatively warm top of 21 in the city, Parramatta and Penrith, slightly cooler in Liverpool and Campbelltown. The showers increase again on Sunday and continue building as the skies become more overcast. At this stage, it's likely we'll see showers each day next week, with the heaviest falls up to 20 millimetres around the middle of the week. And that is the very latest from the ABC News team. Thanks for your company. Enjoy the rest of your evening.